is Serial at Midnight, the official YouTube channel of serialatmidnight.com. And there are those who call me Heath. Guys, I'm glad you're here because this is the Icons of Horror Godzilla video. And I gotta be honest with you, I debated for a long time about whether Godzilla is indeed a horror icon. And I have decided, yes, absolutely, because where he came from is such a place of horror. We'll get into it because he, obviously he went to silly places, and some of those movies are not horror. When you get into just like Son of Godzilla, where it's like a little baby Godzilla, and it's whatever. But that character is so rooted in the horror tradition. We'll get into all of that, but I will say I'm going to show you my Godzilla collection. It's not complete. It's extensive. I have most of these movies on DVD, Blu-ray, and even some VHS tapes, but it's not complete. And if you want a deeper view of my thoughts on Godzilla, because I gotta be honest with you, it's been a few years since I've watched some of these movies, and most of them I've only seen once. But I did write about them for F This Movie, which is the site that I've written hundreds of columns for. And so, in anticipation of the 2014 Godzilla movie, the American Godzilla movie, I went and watched every Godzilla movie. There's like 30 of them. I watched every Godzilla movie in order and wrote about them. I divided them into 3 different columns because Godzilla is divided into 3 eras. There's the Showa Era, Showa, which is the 50s, 60s, into the mid-70s. And that's my favorite, honestly. It's the more approachable, goofy, fun, pop Godzilla. And then there's the Heisei era, which is the 80s and the 90s, up to 95. And that's a little bit more realistic, a little bit more played for. You can feel like Indiana Jones kind of influence in some of that stuff. You can always you can see what trends were going on in pop culture through Godzilla, through each installment. And then finally it was the Millennium collection, or the Millennium period. And that is obviously the stuff from 99 to, I have a cheat sheet here with the facts so that I can keep all this straight in my head, because it's a lot, to 99 to 2004. And then they kind of let it cool off for a while, and that's, well, we'll get to all that. So I'm just going to say, I did not grow up with these movies. I did not come from, there are none of these movies that I know like the back of my hand. So that's not the point of this video. The point is not for me to brag about my Godzilla knowledge. I am, like you, an enthusiast. I just like movies. So I started with this. I started with the Godzilla collection. This is from Classic Media, and I believe it's out of print now. But when I bought it, it was fairly reasonable. It was actually kind of cheap, if I remember correctly. And it's not everything from the Showa era. It's mixed, and this is going to be difficult because Godzilla rights in the U.S. particularly are all over the place. Different companies have different licensing rights, so I'm going to be jumping back and forth on some of this stuff. Bear with me. This is actually a challenge. I'm going to also be honest that I filmed this video. I've done like 5 or 6 takes of this, and hopefully this will be the one. We start with this is the movie that starts it all. This is a cool, it's got a little slipcase ribbon sort of thing on it. It's not a slipcase, a slip ribbon. This movie's from 1954. It has both the Japanese and the American version in a clamshell package with a booklet that explains basically why Godzilla matters. And Godzilla matters because that character is rooted in the fears of the Japanese people. After World War II, during World War II, the bombings that went on, the H-bomb, nuclear warfare, this is a people that lived in fear of basically just being killed in the night, or just death instantaneously. And so I think a lot of America certainly had that fear too after World War II, and that's where a lot of the 50s paranoia movies come from. But the Japanese handled it through Godzilla. He is the manifestation of this fear of nuclear mutation, of what could happen with science unchecked. Some serious real-world ramifications when you look at the origins of Godzilla, and their answer to this fear was to create this monster that they could then control, that they could overcome. And that's another thing that I would like to say about horror too, because that's why I really think that's why horror as a genre exists. it's all monsters. It's horror is often fun for monsters, but horror movies usually have something to say. They're trying to comment on something. They have a purpose of existing beyond just well, here's a cool monster, let's do this thing. Sometimes they do, but usually they're trying to overcome something. They're trying to address something, and to give us control over what we actually have no control over. So that's why Godzilla is horror, definitely. You cannot deny that he is a manifestation of fear. And I also have it, I've picked this movie up on Blu-ray. This is a Criterion Collection edition. I do not own very many Criterion Collection discs at all. I think I have 4. But because normally it's a whole other subject, but I'm content to just watch the movie most of the time. But I did want to spring for this one on Blu-ray because it is so classic, and this is, when I bought this was the only way you could buy it on Blu-ray, and it might still be, but it's got great essays and some special features in here. The music is iconic. The creation of the monster himself is totally iconic. But then we'll go on to the next entry. This is Godzilla Raids Again from 1955. Again, the Japanese and the US version. And this is diminished returns, and Godzilla now is kind of, this is the first, we've got like a giant battle between 2 monsters, and so that's where this sort of thing takes off. Let me consult my cheat sheet here. Yes, I just wanted to make sure I was right. Mothra versus Godzilla. This is where the fun, this is where the fun begins, to quote Anakin Skywalker. This is really, though, this is where Godzilla, to me, becomes pop culture legend. Color film, and we go to color now. You've got the 2 twins who sing the song like Mothra. I'm not going to do it, but they sing the Mothra song. Mothra, of course, the iconic giant moth who's benevolent. She doesn't want to hurt us, you guys. Mothra is... she's like a force of nature. That there's so much in these movies that I don't. They're foreign to my sensibilities because I'm obviously American. They're so rooted in their Asian origins, the respect for the land, the power of the land. We don't have a lot of that in America. We have our own things, but we do have respect for the land, or some of us do. But there's so much just like balance. It's all about the balance. And so some of this stuff is just so foreign to me, but so fun and so admirable. And this is, you guys, this is, if you're gonna have 5 Godzilla movies, and one of them has to be this one. I pronounce this Ghidorah. This is trouble territory, but this is the 3-headed monster, like the 3-headed dragon guy. This is very fun. And the back of the box says, again, we have the Japanese and the US version. It says, it's from 1964. It mixes giant monster action, paranormal mystery, and a James Bond style intrigue. And that's really, I love this kind of stuff. For a while, I had decided that Ghidorah was my favorite of the Godzilla monsters. Because I love Godzilla, right? But some of these monsters, like Mothra, and some of them are just crazy. And Ghidorah, whatever. He's one of my favorites. Invasion of the Astro Monster is next. This is from 1965. Ghidorah is back. We have Rodan. I don't know what else there is to say about this one. Now this is where things get tricky. We have to jump to another company for Ebirah, the Horror of the Deep. Ebirah is essentially crab guy, I guess, and it's got like Mothra's back in this one. I'll tell you what the back, like on the back, this is from a company called Kraken Releasing. I'm not sure if they're a subsidiary of another company or not, but the back says, unless you count the sea monster, but there's nothing suspicious about Lechty Island unless you count the sea monster the size of a skyscraper. These movies are so much fun. I love, if you haven't guessed from this channel, I love 60s kitsch. I love 60s retro entertainment. 60s and into the early 70s, just some of the stuff that came out, so goofy but so fun. And I really love that it's the 1966 Batman thing, like I hated 1960s. I loved 1966 Batman when I was a kid, And then I saw Batman 1989 with Michael Keaton, and I was like, man, that shit was terrible. And then you get older, and I've gone back to that super fun, like I recognize the fun of it, and I'm able to appreciate it. And that's really the appeal of like a whole swath of these Godzilla movies. Okay, and then after that is Son of Godzilla, which I don't believe that I have. And Son of Godzilla, again, is like a little bitty cute Godzilla. I assume designed to sell stuffed animals and like toys. I don't know, but definitely goofier, but not unwelcome. And then after that one is Destroy All Monsters, which did get a release, I'm pretty sure, but I never picked it up. Destroy All Monsters I don't even remember who did it, but I missed out on that one. I do not have Destroy All Monsters. I've seen it, but I don't own it. And then after that one is All Monsters Attack. We're back to this set. It's 1969. Son of Godzilla's in it here. I'm going to see if this will show up. Look at this. Look at this up here. We got like a little baby Godzilla fighting monsters alongside the big Godzilla. It's crazy, you guys. It's a color movie. The back of this is black and white. But we move on from this. Godzilla versus Hedorah. Back to Kraken releasing. You see how this is just so back and forth. This is why it's taken me so many takes to get this right. Hedorah wants to snuff the planet with sludge and toxic gas, but first he's got to fight Godzilla, who will kick his smoggy mass. You see what they did there? You thought they were going somewhere else, didn't you? This is basically Godzilla versus pollution. Again, you can always trace kind of what's going on in these movies, or in the zeitgeist of culture at a certain time with what Godzilla is fighting. Because at this point, he's now like a protector. He's like a force of nature who defends the people and, freedom? I don't know. Who defends their right to live, right? He defends them from smog and pollution, which will overtake them. So it's very interesting. Then is Godzilla versus Gigan. This is... Question: what's 65 meters tall, has a buzzsaw in its stomach, and hooks for hands? Answer: Godzilla's not sure either, but he's got to fight it, and King Ghidorah anyway. So we've got two monsters in this one, and it is very cool that Gigan, he has a buzzsaw in his stomach. There's no other way to say it. Like, we're getting absolutely crazy with some of these monster designs. The one after that is Godzilla versus Megalon, and I don't see Godzilla versus Megalon, so I'm assuming I do not have it. I don't actually remember Godzilla versus Megalon, so I can't even talk about it. But I will say that after that is the absolute classic Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And I don't have that on DVD either because it's very hard to find on DVD, but I do have the VHS tape. This is a double pack actually that's got Gigan and Mechagodzilla on it. But this is how I can watch Mechagodzilla or own it for my obsessive compulsive disorder. There is, I don't remember if I've said this in this take or if it was in a previous take, but there is a box set, it's a Japanese box set that has like all the Godzilla movies. And if I imported those, like I could import those, but there's no English subtitles. So it's all in Japanese, no English subtitles. So that won't help. Like I could have the movies, but I won't know what's going on. So it's still very difficult for Americans to get Toho company Blu-rays, DVDs, complete sets, things like that. So we're still stuck here with all these different companies distributing these things. And then for the last film of the Showa Era, we are back to this box set. It's the last disc in here. This is the Terror of Mechagodzilla, the Return of Mechagodzilla, and that closed it all out. And this is, you guys, I'm going to just read a little bit of the back of this to you. Evil spacemen from the black hole are plotting to flatten Tokyo and build their own utopian city. Aided by deranged scientist Dr. Mifune, the aliens unleash a rebuilt Mechagodzilla and the monster Titanosaurus to do their evil bidding until Godzilla surfaces to defend his homeland and earth-shattering destruction begins. Sounds great, right? That's pretty cool. And that's the end of the Showa Era. Showa? But I do have to shout out this movie, which is essentially, it's a Universal movie. The Universal has the rights to this. It's King Kong versus Godzilla, and it is exactly what you would expect. I believe that most of this was done by Americans. John Beck presents King Kong versus Godzilla. Michael Keith, Harry Holcomb, and then we have some Japanese people, but it's directed by... I don't know. I'm acting like I know what this is, like the history of this. I do not. I just know that this is goofy as crap. It's got Godzilla, a guy in a suit, versus King Kong, another guy in a suit. models, people running away. It's exactly what you want from a movie like this. It's so goofy. Go back to the conversation about 1966 Batman. So goofy. And though it is not... there was a sequel, which is... I consider this a sequel. This is King Kong Escapes, another Universal title where we have not just King Kong, a guy in a suit, but a mecha King Kong. And I believe Godzilla's back in this one too. And the action begins when the conniving Doctor Who builds a robot Kong in order to retrieve a highly radioactive element for his mysterious benefactor, Madam X. Come on. So, maybe not technically part of the Godzilla canon, but you gotta shout him out. So, now we start the Heisei era. The bulk of it's behind us. We'll move quickly. So, the Heisei era begins with the return of Godzilla, which is on this Kraken releasing Blu-ray. It's a lost for a generation, a new era in giant monster history begins, and this is very 80s. It is very much of its time. At this phase in my life, I tend to prefer the 60s and the 70s stuff, but there's certainly an argument to be made for these, and as I get older, maybe, things always are moving around. That's why I'm constantly shifting opinions and stuff. And then Godzilla versus Biollante. I don't have that one. That's not... they came out on Blu-ray here, I believe, for like a hot minute, and it was gone like that, and I never got it. But Godzilla versus Biollante, it sounds like something you would mouthwash and gargle with. And then after that, it's Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, which we're jumping to another company now. This is Columbia TriStar. Are they distributing for somebody? It's Sony. So Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, 1991. And then from there we go Godzilla versus Mothra. I believe this Godzilla and Mothra, The Battle for Earth. That's 1992. I believe that's what's that's the next one. The titles of these are getting confusing for me. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. Followed immediately by Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. Godzilla versus Destoroyah, which that's how it, I'm not pronouncing that wrong. It's Destoroyah, which I think we can just translate to destroyer. That's 1995. And then closing out, oh no, that is the last of the Heisei era. Oh, I didn't give that its proper due. And closing out the Heisei era, Godzilla versus Destoroyah. Moment of silence. But don't worry, because very little time passes before we're on to the Millennium Era with Godzilla 2000. Did this have an alternate name? I don't know that it's Godzilla 2000. This gets its own disc. There was a Japanese release. There was a US release. Like, this came out in theaters in the US. I remember. I didn't go see it, but it came out. He's bigger and tougher than ever. I gotta say, too, as time goes on, Godzilla always gets bigger. Godzilla versus Megaguirus, 2000 as well. All right, the next one is a mouthful. It's Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All-Out Attack. From 2001, followed by Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. No, I'm sorry, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. Do you see how confusing this is? How can anyone keep all this straight? Just make it through, Heath. Just get through the end of the video. Godzilla Tokyo SOS from 2003. And then that's this one. And then Godzilla Final Wars was essentially the end of the line for classic Godzilla for the Millennium period. And then, of course, he came back for Shin Godzilla, which I have not seen. I know. I need to. I think it got a limited theatrical run, but it didn't play around here. So that's that. And you will notice that there is no 1998 American Godzilla with Matthew Broderick, with Ferris Bueller, Jean Reno. I don't have that movie. I should probably pick it up just for completionist sake, because hey, I've come this far. Am I right? I've come this far. And I don't think that's a super expensive movie, but I did get to go see that with my dad at the time, and I don't honestly remember what we thought about it. I think we thought that it was kind of fun. but it was pretty goofy and it was pretty empty. And now, of course, as a Godzilla fan, as somebody who has watched all these movies and I really find something to appreciate, I don't think Americans should be directing Godzilla movies because that character resonates so deeply with the Japanese tradition. He comes from a place of... he's so steeped. There's no other way to say it. That character exists because of the Japanese, and he's not ours. I don't think we should be messing with it. I think we can certainly watch it and appreciate it and enjoy it, but I don't know that we have a great history of making our own Godzilla movies, which of course brings me to this. This is did Gareth Edwards direct this? I always get Gareth Edwards confused with Rian Johnson, which is not fair. They're not the same guy. Because of the Star Wars thing. They both came from a monster movie and then did a Star Wars movie. That's why. Godzilla, look, this movie's fine. This movie's absolutely fine. I'm trying to be very political here. Not political. Just polite. So I was disappointed. I'm just going to be honest. I was disappointed when I saw this. I saw it in the theater with my wife. Bryan Cranston, he's an American national treasure. Who doesn't... I love Bryan Cranston. But it's such a deviation of what I want from a Godzilla movie. There's barely any Godzilla in it. JB from F This Movie famously said on the podcast review for Godzilla that the movie should be called I Saw Godzilla, because most of the movie, most of the Godzilla shots are just reaction shots of people going like... That's most of this movie. Whereas we want to see all-out monsters attack. We want to see Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, giant monsters all-out attack. That's what we want to see. We want all of that. We want everything thrown together into this big soup of monster mayhem. But it's fine. And I honestly, I need to revisit it again. I know there's a sequel coming out. But it's fine. I'm not trying to dump on it. My daughter loved it. We came out, she was like, well, that was fantastic, and that is awesome. I'm so glad that she enjoyed it. And we were never like, well, you shouldn't like it, because it doesn't actually stick to the traditional Japanese whatever. So if you love that movie, that's awesome. I'm optimistic, not optimistic. I'm reserving judgment on the sequel, hoping that there might be some more of the elements that I appreciate from classic Godzilla stuff. But again, see aforementioned conversation, but I don't know that Americans have any business messing around with Godzilla. We can do King Kong. We have King Kong. He's our Godzilla. Let's stick with that. Kong Skull Island, it's fine. If you were wondering, it's okay. It's fine. So, with that being said, I will show you, holy cow, I will show you the entire Godzilla Blu-ray and DVD and VHS collection. This is my Godzilla collection. So there it is. What a long and exhausting video. Guys, if you made it to the end of this video, you are champs. I appreciate you very much. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please engage in the comments below about what you think about Godzilla, or even on social media. I got to shout out Brian and Mary for checking in with me on Twitter the other day. They were taking their collection to trade in, and they just wanted to see if there was anything from their collection that I wanted before they took it to trade in. That is amazing. Brian and Mary, you guys are so cool. Shout out. So just engage. I'm out there all the time. Social media at Serial Midnight on Twitter, Serial Midnight on Instagram. I'm on Instagram just like about every day. Serial@midnight.com. And again, if you want more, because you watch a bunch of movies all at one time, you do a crash course on some of these movies, they're gonna slip out of your head a little bit, and it's kind of a commitment to rewatch about 30 movies. So it is documented forever on the internet at F This Movie. Links in the description, pal. Guys, thank you so much. I do appreciate you so much, and I will catch you later.